Hello everyone, good morning. It is wonderful to see so many of you here. Well done, you've chosen the best possible way to spend the next 2 days. Blue Earth Summit is quite clearly, look at the queues, the place to be. My name's Hannah MacInnes. I'm going to be jumping around between the two stages, hosting, talking to some amazing people. And I'm particularly delighted to be starting with this session, Investing in Nature's Regeneration. How do we close the funding gap? And I can't really think of anyone better to talk to us about the role that business can play in protecting our natural world than our guest this morning. You might know of her, you might have seen her. She is, of course, one of the most successful businesswomen and star of Dragon's Den. But she's given her voice and her influence to champion protecting the environment and particularly to halting biodiversity loss, which we'll talk about in a moment. Supports so many amazing things. She's a fellow for the WWF, a trustee for the Tusk Foundation. She is an ambassador for the RSPB and the Marine Protection Foundation, and much more. She's also a visionary for compassion in world farming, which I'm a huge fan of. So Deborah, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm chuffed to be here. Just so you all know, I literally ran in because I do like to use public transport. I try really hard, but for anybody who was on the train with me, can you give me a wave? Because I actually had, there we are, you see? We were all stuck on the same train that was a bit late.
I couldn't be less surprised. I'm not at all
Well,
surprised.
they were all heading here as well, so that was brilliant.
Everyone on the train heading here. It's great to see so many people. But tell us why or when or what prompted you to put so much energy and dedication into the environment, into biodiversity loss?
So 45 years ago at college, my project was on climate change. So I was worried about it in my teens, but it was always something that was going to happen way beyond my lifetime. You know, it was going to be, obviously, climate was changing, all of the stuff that goes with that, but I probably wouldn't see it. But of course, it's not true. You know, it's happened much faster than we thought it was going to, probably because we haven't really tackled it. And talking about it as something in the future, obviously very quickly changed into thinking, my goodness, if it can change this fast, we don't have a lot of time to get this sorted. So it's always been there. I won my first environmental award for holiday parks, and not terribly environmental, but I won my first environmental award probably about 30 years ago for doing what we could. And that's what I always say. You can only do what you can. You know, you should do as much as you can, but you can only do what you can.
And do you feel like a lone voice now, then? Has it changed? Do you feel like there's more of a clamour is part of business?
I think it's changed a lot, but particularly in the last 2 years. And I was just chatting to somebody from Ernst & Young on the train, saying 2 years ago, particularly talking biodiversity, businesses have got their minds wrapped around net zero. You cannot have net zero without nature. And we haven't joined those two together. And I was a lone voice talking about nature for a long time, but that's definitely changed. You know, you go into business now, but the trouble is, what we do is talk about biodiversity and nature loss, but I'm not sure business is quite sure how to tackle it. You know, we've kind of got the structures for carbon, for net zero, you know, for measuring carbon, measuring our footprint, plans to actually reduce, you know, to hit our targets, but I'm not sure that we know what to do about biodiversity.
Do you think that even in the first place they understand it? I mean, people use the word biodiversity, and actually quite often, I was listening to you on the Green Money podcast, and actually thank goodness your co-host said, can you explain it? Because I think there are lots of terms people talk about and forget to actually drill down into what they are.
It's so true. And actually on the Big Green Money show, before we talked about it, we were seeking a word beyond biodiversity. We were trying to find a way of explaining what it was. It's nature. It's our life support system. It's all of the creatures and the plants and the plants that give us air, the water that is our lifeblood. It's everything, you know. So I think it should be really, really easy dots to join, because we are nature. You know, we are part of that biodiverse system. But I think because it's quite complex and difficult to know what to do about it, it's a little harder to jump on board.
And also business, I mean, you say the clamour is growing, and it is, and look at this room, but generally, still, business isn't the place to care about the environment. GDP and the way productivity functions, growth, all these things, they don't go hand in hand with the natural world.
I'm itching. So business has to be the place, and I've seen a big change. Now, business isn't business. There's businesses that really feel it and mean it and are really tackling it. They're the dream businesses. You know, businesses I've invested in absolutely started at the heart as a business that was going to improve, you know, reduce plastic, reduce carbon footprint. So there are businesses that do it with absolute intent. There are businesses that do it because of ESG, because they have to do it. I don't really mind why businesses get on board, you know, and I also think that sometimes people who are dragged kicking and businesses that are dragged kicking and screaming because their customers say that they want it, if they're dragged through that door, once they see what's beyond, once they see the difference they can make, once they understand how it makes their customers feel and how it can also help their businesses, then they're on board too. You know, they begin to care in the same way and begin to join up the dots. So I actually think businesses are big hope, because business can move much, much faster. And we've seen that, you know. One of the issues that we have is a lack of skills in the environmental space. Not that, you know, there's been people doing it for a very long time, but businesses so quickly jumped into the space and say, hold on a minute, we need to do something about this, that there aren't necessarily the amount of skills that business needs. So I take that as a good sign. I take the fact that business is saying, come on, help us, we need to do this. That is a good sign.
But you said of the customer then, and that's so important. I'm sure many people here have businesses, but we're all customers. And there is so much that we can do as consumers to influence business, isn't there?
Oh, do you know, the lasting thoughts about my podcast, The Big Green Money Show. I'm not advertising it, by the way. We're not making any more, so that's not why I keep saying it. There are 40 up, though, on BBC Sounds.
Very good.
But the lasting comments that I get, it always gets down to the customer and the customer beginning to understand the power they have. So I think there was a long time when the customer would sit there and think, what can I do? Customers are very vociferous now. They have means of being able to show their content or discontent of a business, and they can do that very visually. You know, social media has helped in all of that. Yeah. And I think businesses that don't get that, they're in trouble. Sorry. They don't know it yet, but they are in trouble.
So what about, okay, customers can play their role, businesses can play their role, but can we do anything without the government being on board? And you might start itching again. I mean, we've seen only last week in Manchester and before that pledges that really would make lots of our hearts sink. And it's only Theresa May, who sadly obviously isn't around anymore, she said net zero isn't a cost to be minimised, it's the growth opportunity of the century, worth $1 trillion to British business by the end of the decade. But is it any good her saying that when the rest are not singing from the same hymn sheet?
Well, I think that's why I said I think business is our great hope. So it is true that there's a lot of cash waiting to go somewhere, you know. So and this is why business can be so exciting. There's a lot of investment waiting to know where to put itself at the moment. It's not a lack of supply of cash. It's a lack of, you know, well, actually, which direction do we take? Okay. So what you actually need from a government is stability. You need to know there's a constancy. This is the direction of travel. And then business will be able to release that cash. Now, you know, who knows? We've got a general election coming up next year, but we need to start hearing the direction of travel noises so that business will feel a little bit more confident saying, okay, that's where we're going. Because at the moment, a lot of businesses are doing fantastic stuff, but they're feeling like it's in a vacuum, and they're not terribly sure whether or not they're going to be rewarded or the other, you know, or actually, you know, told off for it. So I completely forgot the opposite of rewarded. I'm sure somebody out there knows it.
Punished.
That I see. I'm a girl. Glass half full girl, I find it difficult to say punished.
Difficult to find any of the negative words. Well, I mean, talking about the positive, and you obviously have got so much enthusiasm for this and hope, because you can see it coming off you when you speak about it. And you've said that there are lots of projects and businesses doing brilliant things. I know there are so many, but perhaps you could give us some of your favourite leading examples?
Well, what I am seeing a lot, and I get a lot of requests from businesses now to talk to them about particularly biodiversity. But what I'm loving is that I'm seeing a lot of businesses. I was recently at a Bupa conference. Well, it wasn't a conference. It was this big competition that they ran, £100,000 prize, but much more important than that, it was about coming up with sustainable solutions, not just within healthcare, but £100,000, that's fantastic. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are, got their inventions, would love to get their £100,000, but contacts. So that it wasn't just the cash up front, it wasn't come up with a great idea. They have built in this wonderful process that says, okay, you come up with the idea, there are 10 of you who are going to be, in fact there were 20, I think, 20 businesses that are going to be nurtured. And then at the end of that process, when you're ready, we will help you with those contacts. And I'm seeing that a lot. The Royal Academy of Engineering, I've just launched a competition with them to find sustainable solutions to everyday life, and that's sort of kitchen sink engineers. So what I am seeing is a lot more businesses encouraging innovation in sustainability and doing it in a very practical way, offering cash, offering time, offering connections. It's what dragons do.
What about B Corp? How much does that inspire you? Do you think that's really helping businesses? They do have challenges. It's not easy to get hold of.
No, so 3 of my Dragon's Den investments have just gone through B Corp. That means, Dragon's Den investments, they're all quite small businesses. I think it's very important. And I think it's important not because you get the B Corp stamp, but I always say this, you don't go for awards just because you get the stamp. You don't go for B Corp just because you want the stamp. You do it because you want to think about the way you're doing your business and the way that you structure it, the way that you capture all of your data, and making sure that everybody in that organization absolutely has it at the heart. It's in their DNA. They walk around knowing what they should be doing, instinctively. And I think that's where B Corp can help. It's the whole thought process. I say that about business plans. It's not about the numbers. It's not about the plan itself. It's about the thinking time, the thought process, and embedding that into your team.
I mean, there's obviously a huge plethora of people here doing very different things, and your advice would be different to everyone. But what generally is your advice in terms of going for B Corp, trying to move towards sustainability, not just investing in environmental charities? What's the advice to businesses?
Well, I think one of the problems is, as long as it remains a side issue, it becomes a bit of a nuisance. And business has an awful lot, a lot of busy people in this room. Don't have a load of spare time to think, I tell you what I'll do with my spare time, I'll go. So unless it is placed at the heart, unless it is given the time and the resource can mean cash, resource can mean people, it can mean time, but unless people are given the opportunity to make the changes that need to be made and given the resources, it can't happen. It cannot be seen as a side issue. Actually, the reason I get so passionate about it, I generally think all other problems we have will pale into insignificance if we don't sort this out. And we have a responsibility. Me, my age, I have a responsibility. So I don't think there is anything more important.
You say your age, which I'm sure is very young, but how important is it to get much younger people on board? And do you feel hope looking at the younger generation? I hear a lot of people saying they really do.
Well, I do, but isn't that putting sometimes I worry that we're saying, you look at young people and say, you're our hope, you get it.
Yeah.
But that's an awful lot of responsibility. And I don't think that means that I, therefore, I don't have to do my bit because it's their future and they're going to do it. I have a much bigger responsibility because I've kind of lived through the times ignorantly causing the problems. So I don't beat myself up over it. I didn't really get it. So I think that we all have a part to play. Of course, it's really important that young people are on. It's important that every age group is on board, isn't it? It's our world.
What is next for you then? I mean, I said in your introduction you're doing so much, but what projects have you got coming up personally in this field?
Oh, in this field? So I spend a lot of time talking with businesses. Sometimes I feel frustrated because I do talk a lot. And sometimes I just want to get my sleeves rolled up and do something, and it's like do something. But I have got a lot of, you will see, I've got an awful lot of sort of conferences that I'm attending, spending my time working with businesses. I've got Dragon's Den, so the next series is already filmed, and I'm so chuffed that our producer is really on board, so we get a lot. I cannot tell you the difference. When I first started on Dragon's Den, I promise you, Theo used to call me Swampy. He used to, there she goes again, on and on and on about the environment. Now, there isn't a business that comes into Dragon's Den that doesn't talk about sustainability. Now, anybody who's watched it will know my next question is why, how, why you say, can you say that? But the very fact it's on all of their agendas is amazing, and I've got some fantastic businesses out of Dragon's Den that are born of sustainability. So that, to me, is an absolute guide to the shift in business focus.